Hi, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of the WriteHer podcast. I am Jillian Brander, content creator and digital media producer, and I am here with Kathy Douglas. Kathy Douglas is an award winning writer, accredited public relations consultant, and owner of Kathy Douglas Incorporated, an organization that can help you with your writing and editing. How are you doing today, Kathy?
I'm great. How are you?
Woo, I'm sure a lot of mothers will get some great tips out of this, and even those of us that aren't mothers. I'm just really excited to share this. Today, Kathy and I are chatting about tips for work-life balance, motherhood, and more. So, yeah, here we are at I think our eighth episode of the WriteHer podcast. And, it's really great to be able to share your perspective. And like I was saying, I'm not personally a mother, but God bless all those mothers. I don't know how y'all do it. Both of my
Well,
sisters.
I have to say that my idols, once I became a mother, were single moms.
Mm,
Because and I've known several really great moms, who are single moms, and my hat is off to them because even just from babyhood,
mm,
being able to hand the baby over to someone just to be able to take a shower for 20 minutes is so valuable. And I can't even imagine what it must be like not to have a single break. You know,
right.
those people, and there are more and more of them who are electing to be single moms. And, like I said, I've known some pretty successful single moms, but I wouldn't want to do it myself, you know.
I
I
know.
was very, very fortunate to have a really supportive, involved partner to do everything that I've done. In fact, without his support, I wouldn't have had the career that I had because he pretty much sacrificed his career in order for me to have the career that I had. And together, we've always approached everything as a team. And I know how lucky I am. I've had
Mhm.
many, many friends stop me and say, look, you know what? You don't have a leg to stand on if you complain because your husband does the laundry and your husband does the grocery shopping and your husband changes diapers and, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera. So I think it does help an awful lot if you have a supportive partner, A, and B, that you kind of agree on uh, kind of basic values,
Right.
because that way you're on the same page,
Mm.
and it really helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I can only imagine. You were mentioning single moms don't have the opportunity to pass the little one to say, I'm gonna need a shower myself for 20 minutes, right? And to me, someone that doesn't have children, I've seen both of my sisters. So we're a family of girls. My dad had three girls. My oldest sister had three girls, and my middle sister had two girls.
Wow, lots of girls.
So between my partner and I, we have eight nieces and one nephew.
Wow.
And I mean, it's crazy to me, the different families and their dynamics, and seeing my sisters and their partners have to really work together. I can only imagine after trying to have chase your dreams in your career, how challenging mentally, physically, and emotionally that must be. So
Yeah.
I'm super excited to talk about your blog, which what perfect timing, it's Mother's Day. Woo, Mother's Day month in
Yes.
May. Everybody, just represent Cal State Fullerton. I'm gonna grab my
Yes.
mom some Titan gear. But yeah, coming up with Mother's Day, I think it's great to learn from other mothers and those who, as all of us should, respect mothers and how hard they work. So your blog has some excellent tips for that are universal. We were chatting about a little earlier. I was finding a lot of benefit in these tips, and I was like, I do need to give myself some grace, which is the last tip, which we'll talk.
Yes, actually, giving yourself grace, I think, is probably the most important
Mm,
thing for everybody. Anyone who's working is facing a lot of stress and a lot of deadlines and lots of tension.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, like the literal end of the day, um, you have to go home and you have to be good to yourself. And that is very hard when you have other people that you're responsible for, like kids or a
Mhm.
husband or a partner. But it's really important that you make yourself a priority as much as you can. I remember the days when, you know, it was very, very difficult having three kids and a career and a marriage and a house you know, um, and I always came last
Mm,
because that's how mothers are. But now that I have a lot of perspective and age, I look back on those days and I think there were ways that I could have been better to myself, given myself some grace, um, overlooked some, maybe not so great characteristics and just gave myself grace. Um, and I think that most people don't, especially working moms. They always put themselves last. And I know in my case, it kind of wrecked my health.
mm,
I was working so hard and, had, um, everybody has troubled kids at one point or another, and went through some troubled times with one of our kids. And I just thought, I was going to go nuts. And looking back on it, I think I could have stepped back quite a bit more than I did from putting so much pressure on myself. You
mm,
know, my husband once told me, he said, if you just went to work and you put in 85% of your effort instead of 110 every single day, he said, no one would notice.
exactly.
And I think he's right, but I was never able to quite do that
Right.
until I went out on my own. And now that I'm my own boss, it's a whole lot easier to make yourself a priority and set your own schedule and all those things.
Yeah. When you mentioned, I definitely see that when you're talking about having the experience now, looking back, can you give an example of a way that you would see yourself doing something differently to take care of yourself, like an example?
Well, I think even just coming home, instead of rushing around and finishing the dinner and getting it on the table and, launching right into baths and
Mm,
bedtime stories and all that, maybe I could have taken 20 minutes to go for a walk,
mm,
or maybe I could have just gone down to my bedroom and shut the door for 20 minutes and
mm,
just, maybe taken a shower or given myself a facial or,
mm.
something silly,
Just for yourself,
or
yeah.
just rest. I didn't have to go 24/7. I could have been nicer to myself. And along the way, I think I would have been better at what I was doing all the way around, better employee, better wife, better mother, because you can't put yourself last all the time. You really have to be kind to yourself. If nothing else, as an example for your kids. I'm afraid that I was so hard charging and so driven all the time that I probably gave them a little bit of a bad impression. You really should.
Mm,
I hate the term work-life balance, but
mm,
it's there for a reason. Um, and there does have to be a balance between how much you give on the job and how much you give to other people in your family, and then how much you need for yourself. Sometimes you just need some time. And in looking back, I don't think it would have hurt anybody if I would have said, look, mom needs 20 minutes, you know,
yeah.
and even 20 minutes can be really rejuvenating.
Right. I mean, just to be able to breathe and just,
Yes.
sit away from everything and just decompress or literally meditate for 5 minutes and close your
I
eyes. I
do
mean,
I do remember when we were in the thick of all three kids, and there was one year where each kid went to a different school, and
mm,
the deadlines and the start times were all different, and I just thought I was going to go crazy that year. And I remember thinking that the commute to and from work was my only
yeah.
respite. And sometimes I would go to work way early, like I get there at, quarter of 8, 7:30,
Mhm.
because the quiet of the office was such a relief.
Wonderful. Yeah,
You
you
know,
needed
after
it
this
all.
chaotic morning that I'd have, I'd get to work and I'd think, I feel like I put in a full day already. We haven't even started work yet.
Starting your second
So
shift.
sometimes your commute can be a blessing if you look at it that way. Especially now, when I was commuting, we didn't have Spotify. And now I can listen to a podcast, I can listen to, a murder podcast,
Yeah.
or I can listen to music and whatever I want. And it's a huge break, sometimes to be in the
Right.
car.
And it's like mothers, they just don't get that. You're with your children everywhere. I've seen my sisters. You can't, like you're saying, you can't go to the bathroom, depending on the age,
Yes.
right? Little kid.
Yes.
And then if you have
You get the
multiple,
little hands crawling under the door when you're in the bathroom. Mommy, mommy, I know you're in there.
I mean, for me, I just know like at this point in my life, like I want to be very into my partner and I know that I would be a wreck mentally.
No,
Yeah.
it's really good that you have that time though. I mean, I know you just got married and those first few years, are just wonderful, and in our case, we had like no money at
Mhm.
all. I mean, we just were like making no money at all, but those first 5 years were just wonderful. I mean, we got to know each other and there were some rough times, but I think those 5 years of not having any kids were really valuable. I mean, a really valuable base for everything else that built on top of it.
Learned how to work as a team.
Yes.
Yeah, and this podcast is top tips for success from an experienced mom, employee, and partner. So yeah, those different areas, I feel like these tips, most importantly, giving yourself grace, definitely apply to.
So one of the other ones was, and I think this is really important, is you make family, or in your case, your partner, you make each other a priority.
Mm.
And I grew up in a very perfect home. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. She only had me. And I was a very quiet, unassuming, easy kid. And our home was perfect. There was never a spot of dust anywhere. My mother kept a perfect home. And I mean perfect. When you opened a drawer, it was
Wow.
organized, it was clean, there were no crumbs, and so I grew up with these really unrealistic expectations of myself. And over the years, I've had to really lower my standards, which is another hint. But along with that goes making family a priority. So what I mean by that is when the kids are, especially when they're little, but even anytime they're at home, you make them and your husband a priority, uh, rather than cleaning or
Mm,
even cooking, or you know any kind of housework or errands or
doing
chores,
it all,
all
yeah,
that
trying to
stuff.
do it all.
Because bottom line is most of that stuff can wait. If there's a little dust on the furniture now, I don't worry about it. Or if there's dust bunnies, and we have a dog, so there's like clouds of dog hair. My husband thankfully gets out a broom because he can't stand it. He literally is at it every day, but that's because he's retired. Weren't retired, we would have the dog hair on the floor because I would be reading to the kids, or I would be cooking. I always made sure they had a baked good every week.
Mhm.
Something that I made for them. Um, and those things were very important to me, and I think stuck with the kids. Whereas if I would have been like, put yourself to bed, give yourself a bath, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do the dishes and clean the kitchen. I mean, I'm not saying that I never did that, but
Yeah.
I tried to, as much as possible, spend the time with the family rather than on, mundane household kinds of things.
Yeah, and I feel like, being a mom, there's like you're saying, in that time of family time, right? Another one of your tips is teaching your children responsibility. So I can only imagine trying to make family time a priority while teaching them to be responsible for their actions, for their behavior. I mean, you must have to choose your words really wisely because
Yes. You know, I think it's really important right from the very get-go when they're only like 3 or 4 years old,
right.
and you know that you could hand them forks that aren't too sharp and say, hey, put these on everybody's placemat
Mhm.
so that we can have dinner. You know, a little 4-year-old can do that. And that is one thing that, you know, I don't care where the fork is, but if it's somewhere on the placemat,
Right.
it's fine, you know.
Mhm.
Um, Making sure that your kids know that, I know allowance is important, and actually financial, what do they call that? Financial,
Literacy? Like financial literacy?
yes, exactly. Financial literacy is really important. I understand that. And I always got an allowance, but there was also, I just think that when you're in a family, you expect everyone to give what they can. And you know,
Contribute.
when they're tiny kids, of course, they can't give a whole lot, but you know, they can pick up after the dog poop when they're 8 years old. You
Mhm.
know, they
Clean
can
up
help
after
mom
themselves.
with the dishes, they can help set the table, they can, you know, like I think I said in the blog, they can at least put the new bathroom tissue in when it runs out, you
Right.
know, instead of waiting for me to do it. So
Exactly.
just being part of a family was always really important to my husband and I, teaching them responsibility to the family. And if we all pitched in, then everybody got to, you know, go to the park, have a picnic, play with the dog, you know, go to the movies, you know, but none of that happened unless the chores were done and everybody participated. I mean, you think about these old farm families, you
Right.
know, where everybody gets up at 5 a.m. because, you know, the cows are not going to milk themselves. Well,
Mhm.
it's kind of along those lines, but on a much tamer level.
Suburban level rather
Yes, a
than
much more suburban level. That's right.
yeah, but I mean, to your point too, there's so many things that, you can teach your kids from whatever age, right? And I think, everybody has different parenting styles. Even both my sisters have different parenting styles. And I would say maybe one sister appears to have more patience than the other, which you could
Patience is
see.
not my strong suit.
Yeah. My one sister's like, I can't, you know,
Right,
and
right,
then the other sister's like, put these forks on the table. So, I think teaching teaching your children what I would imagine, like teaching your children responsibility through taking care of yourself, like it comes full circle, like for your children to be able to see what does it look like to be able to take care of yourself, so that,
right,
if, those behaviors are stressing you out in your life and career and family, how do you adapt yourself to show your kids what it could be?
right. Another thing that I always did when the kids were growing up was a lot of professional development.
Mhm.
I was president of PRSA when they were little, and that was a huge responsibility outside of work, and outside of the family. But again, I don't think I would have gotten through any of that professional development stuff without my husband, because somebody had to shoulder the burden when I was eating a chicken, you know, rubber chicken dinner with my PRSA pals.
Yeah.
So, but I think moms set an example both inside and outside the home. And I think it was really important for my kids, especially my boys, to see competent professional women doing work outside the home and respect them for it, and see that my husband respects me for it. I think that a lot of the problems in society could be solved primarily through better parenting. And
Mhm.
that includes a lot of parenting of boys,
Yeah.
because boys tend to get away with a lot. And they really need to be taught very early on about respecting women, about equality, about all those good things. And it really does start with the home. So,
Yeah. My dad always referenced, the family unit. He did work um, for the police department on gang violence, gang development,
oh, yeah,
so very interesting stuff of, the psychology of why people join a gang, right? Not just,
it's
who are the
because
people
they
that,
don't have dads in the home. A lot of
right. So
times.
the family unit is destroyed and they're searching for another unit
Right.
to survive, literally. So that's kind of, how I see the example of the family unit being explained, and for some, like single mothers, I think that's such a big challenge, right? Where is their support, or how to ask for help, whether, I mean, I don't know, my suggestions would be to, like you're saying, professional development, take care of yourself even in those little times, so that you don't, burn yourself out and run out of resources.
My aunt, my one of my favorite aunts was she's actually my great aunt, but she was widowed at a really early age when she had two little boys. I always admired her because she always put those boys first. And when they were teenagers, she rode motorcycles with them. She actually went skydiving when they wanted to go skydiving. My
Wow.
aunt did everything with those boys. And one of the first things she did was when they were old enough, she put them into Boy Scouts because
Mhm.
she thought it was really important that they have male role models. And
Right.
she decided she wasn't going to date. She didn't want to remarry. She just lived through those boys and raised a couple of amazing human beings, as a result. But yeah, I have to say that, there were a couple of single moms that called on my husband and other men within our little league to kind of be surrogate dads,
Yeah.
for the day or for a time, or sometimes, hey, could you have a talk with so and so
Mhm.
because, he's not, going to school or what have you.
Acting out or
Um,
something. That's
so yeah, I think single moms and single dads, I mean, they both have a tremendous responsibility, and it's really hard for them, without a partner.
yeah, and the that's really great for your the individual who reached out to your husband to feel comfortable in, asking for help in that
Yeah.
sense.
There's
And
one boy in particular in our little league teams that he and my oldest son grew up together, and all those men in the little league kind of took this little boy under their wing and just made sure that he had male role models all around him that were very positive. It was really beautiful to see because it really was kind of the old Hillary Clinton, "It takes a village." It
mm,
was really that in action.
wow.
So it
Yeah.
was really cool.
Yeah, like on my roller derby team, there were many, single moms who, were doing roller derby to empower themselves, and some of them escaping like really abusive relationships,
Yeah,
or, things like that. So in that sort of team setting, it was the same situation, right? Sort of this, you
that's
know,
a real sisterhood.
that is a real sisterhood for sure. I met a lot of amazing people, and yeah, I was just really inspired by, these single parents who, make it happen,
There's
and
a lot of self-sacrifice involved.
there's so much self-sacrifice, and I can only imagine how incredibly demanding that would be.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think we all have this, universal sense of, taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of the next generation, which is they're moving in quick. I mean,
Yes.
it is
You say
my
that, it's really something because you're a whole lot younger than I am. Actually, what we've been talking about kind of leads into another thing that was in the blog, which was ask for help.
Mhm.
You know, I think a lot of us, myself included, maybe especially, we get to the point where we think that we have to do it all. You know,
Mhm.
we have to do it all. It's our responsibility, period. But, grandparents are there for a reason. Friends are there for a reason. in-laws and extended family, they're all willing to help. And I know that my family and Les's family really came through when we needed it. I mean, there was one time when we had two really small boys, and we were playing with them in the park, and my husband fell and broke his ankle. And when he broke his ankle, I mean, he really broke his ankle. He broke a bone that hardly ever gets broken in the ankle. It was at I mean, it was just ugly.
Wow.
I literally had no one to watch the boys, but I had to take my husband to the hospital. Well, a friend and her husband took the boys willingly home. And then they called me and said, we have another appointment we have to get to. Is there anybody who can come and spell us with your two kids? I tried my mom wasn't available. My dad, I couldn't reach. I finally ended up reaching out to a cousin, and he and his girlfriend came over and stayed until I could get home.
Ah,
But it's an example of like, you have to have backstops,
mhm,
and you have to be willing to say, I need help right now. And sometimes it's not as extreme as that, but there are times when you just need help. Maybe a spouse is sick, or
mhm,
something happens in the family unit to kind of disrupt the usual routine.
mhm,
uh, you need to have people that you can ask for help. Even our next door neighbors have just been wonderful. They're a great family, and I know they came through when I had a knee replacement and was pretty much laid up and really crabby because of the pain.
mm,
She came over with a box of goodies and, kind of sat with me and, cheered me up. And so it's important to be able to realize that we're all human. We all can't be all things to all people every single minute of the day. You have to be able to humble yourself a little bit and say, I need help. And uh, people are very willing to do it. People
yeah,
are very willing if you ask them for help. Most people are flattered that you would ask.
right.
So, don't wear out your welcome, but,
Right,
I
exactly. I think
I
if you
think that everybody should feel like we're all in this together, kind of thing.
oh, I 100% agree, in terms of asking for help, being supportive. Like if my sisters called me with any variation of I need you, can you come? I'd be like, I'm down for yes. Or like, I'm in San Diego, my sister lives in San Diego. I need you to come this weekend, there I mean for emergencies absolutely. I feel like people are more than willing and real like you're saying appreciative in trusting that person that you would reach out to. How do you think and I want to ask this question to you in your perspective of being a mom, right? How before or in case of a non-crisis, like if you're struggling with your, you know, like you're really exhausted or you're, depressed, how would you say would be beneficial for a mother to ask for help for that, right? Because it's so exhausting, it's so crazy, should you rely on your friends, partner, therapist? Where do you
All
start?
of it.
All
All
of
of
it.
it. And I've been pretty open about this. I've actually written pretty publicly about my mental health struggles. I have major depression and bipolar 2.
Mm,
And I even had a summer where I pretty much broke down and had to like take a leave from work, and it was really awful. But so I have learned that you have to know your own limitations. That's number one. Number two, you have to lean on your spouse or your partner. And number three, in giving yourself grace, that means, getting a therapist, getting on medication if it's appropriate, having a therapist to talk to, because sometimes there's the psychiatrist,
mm,
which is
mhm,
the I give you medication kind of thing. And then there's the psychologist or the therapist who works with you on talk therapy.
mhm,
And in
mhm,
my case, I have to have both.
mhm.
And staying on the meds. See, when
Right. Don't go cold
when
turkey.
you see psychotic people, the reason they're psychotic is that they're off their meds.
Yeah.
And they go off their meds because they don't like the way the meds make them feel.
Hmm.
Once you get used to the meds, if you're on the right cocktail of medications, it really can help you thrive and survive. But all that aside, say you don't need medication and you're not, clinically depressed. Um, I think that there's a certain hierarchy of people that you call upon, probably family first, then good friends,
Mm,
maybe even next door neighbors,
right.
then, people who are maybe within your professional or your work circle. Because, even even when you get your car worked on, you have to have somebody give you a ride to work.
Hmm.
And I was fortunate that I had a couple of people who live nearby who would take me to work with them um, and give me a ride home when I needed it. So there's that. But
Relationships, it sounds like.
I think that's the key is you have to be willing to also help them when they're in need. And people know who they can trust with their kids and who they feel like they can reach out to in a weak moment. There are people that you wouldn't want to do that with.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. Gosh, Kathy, it sounds so hard.
Well, there's nothing more rewarding than raising a family. I
Mhm.
mean, I would think my husband would agree that even I mean, marriage is super important, but I think we're proudest of the fact that we raised 3 kids through college, and 2 of them are launched. The third is almost launched. But when she graduated from college, the youngest one, we were like, yes, this is a party for us because
Yeah.
we finance 3 college educations, and we're really, really proud of that fact. But even beyond, way before that, there are rewarding moments that you wouldn't miss for the world, that make everything worth it.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm like, mothers, y'all work so you put other people before you. And I get in the sense of like partner. My mom would always say, marriage isn't for you, it's for the other person. Are you willing to go and adapt your behavior
Really
so that
wise.
right. Yeah. I mean, my mom just she is amazing. Gotta plug her. She's gonna listen to this podcast. And say, Mom, you're my favorite mom. But, I think in partners too, like one of your other tips is when you say like lowering your standards or expectations, right? In the midst of all this, I think sometimes, I can only imagine having 3 children, like young children, and being in a new marriage where maybe have children right away. How do you, I mean, it's like, how would you lower your standards in a sense?
Well, I think well, nowadays I do think it's a little easier because there's DoorDash and,
Right.
delivery of groceries to your doorstep, for God's sake.
I know.
I mean, these things didn't exist when we were having kids. But
Right.
I mean, I can't even imagine what a delight it would be to have your groceries delivered, when you have 3 little kids running all around. That would have been, there is nothing like going grocery shopping with 3 small children. I mean, it is not for the weak-hearted. So I
Couldn't
think,
do it.
in some ways you can make it easier on yourself, but all those things are costly. So
Mhm.
if you're really trying to save pennies, you're not going to use DoorDash and you're not going to pay for a delivery service. You're going
Mhm.
to do it all yourself. So, well, this is funny. So when I first started having kids, my first boy, I vowed that I wouldn't use uh, fake diapers,
Mhm. Disposable.
disposable diapers, because they're bad for the environment. So my mother ordered me a diaper service, which was amazing. You
Wow.
know, they come to your door, they take away all the stink, and then they give you all new, fresh, beautiful cloth diapers. It's
Wow.
just, but by the second, I was like, the disposable diapers. Yes, they are the way to go. Disposable diapers. Yes. I really, right now, the environment is not topmost on my mind. I will go for
Right.
it because at one point we had both of them in diapers, and
Mm,
that's a lot of diapers.
I
So
can.
that would have been way too many cloth diapers right there. So, but that's an example of like, I think lowering your standards a little bit
Yeah.
and going with convenience. Sometimes you just go with convenience because time is more valuable than money. You know, sometimes you pay for convenience because you just have to keep your sanity,
I
you
know.
know.
If you're up to your eyes in
Yes.
cloth diapers, and it
Yes.
seems like you'd have to be a real I don't know how you would do it. I mean, my
Well,
sister.
I would never have like washed them out myself, but
Right.
I knew people who did that. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I could never do that. No, no, no.
My mom
But
was saying she grew up, with her family using cloth diapers, and like
yes,
that was how they did it. And she's the same way too, like groceries delivered,
yes, yeah.
Uber Eats,
Well,
like.
and now when you go to the grocery store, there's a whole case in the frozen food and where the meats are,
Uh-huh.
that's all convenience foods, and they're all really good. I mean, some of them are really healthy for you. They didn't have anything like that when our kids were growing up. A hamburger helper, I mean,
Yep.
that was what, they ate at least once a week, because
Oh,
everybody would eat it and it was cheap and,
yep. Make it out of a
as
box.
the kids grew up, it was funny because they all started eating so much that we would have to get two boxes and 2 pounds of meat just to feed the kids because they were eating so much.
Hungry. And
Yes.
I think like it kind of goes hand in hand, like lowering standards, but also giving yourself grace while you're doing that, so that you know that like they kind of go hand in hand, right? In a way, I think, you know, I can only, like I keep saying, I can only imagine.
Well, I will tell you one thing. He would kill me for saying this, but
Ooh, spilled
my
it.
my 28-year-old still washes his vegetables down with water. He'll take a bite of vegetables and then he'll wash it down. And he looks at me and goes, "I'm eating my vegetables, Mom."
Taught him responsibility. He's like,
Oh.
Mom, I taught me the
I said, if
responsibility.
that's what you have to do to get your vegetables in, then that's okay.
That's awesome. Eat your greens, seriously. Things like that, we all need those influential mothers and fathers in our lives. Um so going back to giving yourself grace, the second to the last tip you have is something I did not do in COVID nearly enough, like literally not, which is keep fresh air and exercise on your schedule. And
Yes, I was terrible about that the whole time the kids were growing up. So, I mean, by the time I went out on my own, I had high blood pressure, diabetes.
Mm,
I needed two knees replaced, and much of the deterioration in health was my own fault, meaning I was sedentary in my job. I didn't make myself a priority, so I didn't exercise at all.
mhm.
I hardly ever got out in the fresh air and just enjoyed sunshine and cool breezes. The only time I ever relaxed was on vacation. So when I went out on my own and I actually had time to build exercise into my day, um, it was just a revelation because um,
Sure,
I
it
did
changes
have a little help.
everything.
I did have weight loss surgery in 2018, so that kick-started a lot of the weight loss. But even before that, I started with walking and just I could literally hardly make it around the block. That was how bad, in such bad shape I was. And then once I had both knees replaced, walking got a whole lot easier, but and I'm not as good at it as I once was. I really was once very, very dedicated to walking miles and miles every day. I want to get back into that. What happened was the holidays. When the holidays happened, it was like I could either exercise or I could do the holidays, but I can't do both. And I
Right.
kind of gave it up.
Hmm.
I always go to Tai Chi. Do Tai Chi twice a week religiously. If nothing else, I do that.
Right. That's great.
But
Give
yeah,
yourself
it's really
grace.
good. It's very good for flexibility, coordination, fall prevention.
Balance. Hmm.
I'm at the age where you got to worry about that. But I really do need the cardio, and I actually do need weightlifting as well. But with COVID, we gave up the gym, and I'm still not sure. Maybe now I might go back to the gym because they've lowered the risk
People like,
factors.
yeah.
But for a while we were going to the gym twice a week, Tai Chi twice a week, yoga twice a week, and walking. So I would like to get back to that schedule. But then again, if you get really busy in your job, you can't do all that. So that's what's happened is thankfully more work is coming in. And
Mhm.
that means that I have to be more judicious about time management. But I still try to get out, even if it's just in the garden, walking around the garden for a few minutes,
Mhm.
sunshine. It really does jumpstart your brain. There's something about being in the fresh air that really is a major elixir.
Oh, I totally agree. During COVID, in that isolation, it's like nobody I didn't go out much. I didn't get it in nearly enough fresh air just being outside. And I think, you know, that was probably one of the most challenging times because you're so right when you say it's like an elixir, and that's why I love going outdoors. I love camping. I love being able to sightsee and things like that because it's really great for your health. But I think also to your point, to be able to give yourself grace in those moments of, oh, I used to, like, for me, I say in my head often, like, well, I used to be a roller derby athlete that used to do endurance for 4 hours every Sunday and worked out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I think for me, one of the best things that I've done is not be too hard on myself that I don't do that anymore, but just looking at the positive things, like, taking a lap around the office and like, when I started to notice that even the minimal stuff was good, I did that more. And then
Yes.
I had more energy to do other things
And
that I was
they
proud
say
of.
that you can work out for 10 minutes, like go for a 10-minute walk 3 times a day.
Mhm.
And that's as good as if you walk 30 minutes straight.
Right,
So with that in mind, I mean, um, running over to get coffee at Able Coffee Roasters,
right.
you do that a couple times a day. And that's a few steps. And I do think the step counters are good. If you have a step counter on your watch,
You.
I used to try to do 10,000 steps a day. Now I give myself grace and I only do 8, but
Oh, you only do
try to I try to keep that
I'm
up.
trying to do 6,000 okay? I mean,
Oh, you're still
woo!
working full time at a sedentary job, so you got to give
Absolutely.
yourself a little
A
slack.
a little slack, a little grace. I mean, we can definitely all
So
use.
I was going to tell you
Yeah.
that one of the things that I used to really enjoy was sometimes my husband would bring a picnic lunch and we'd go to the Arboretum and just go over. I'd have to take a longer lunch than usual, but I
Sounds
could go over, just walk over to the Arboretum and just sit and watch the ducks. And, that was a tremendous amount of fresh air, sunshine, good company, away from the office, but, close enough so that you could go back quickly. Just an idea.
I am going to do that. I am definitely going to do that. That is such a good idea. And it's finding those little gems that, you can just be like excited about, I feel like has kind of brought me back from COVID as well.
Also, working at a university, it's just such a beautiful place, and there are so many places you can walk. Also, as an employee, you do get a discount if you want to go over to the student recreation center,
Mhm.
and they have classes and they have a bunch of really state-of-the-art machines. And unfortunately, I did that and then I never went because it felt like because we were in College Park, it's
Mm-hmm.
on completely the opposite side of things, and I just couldn't make myself go.
I know.
So maybe it's not that convenient, but it is on campus.
Yeah, maybe I'll walk to there and then walk back.
That's a nice long walk.
It is. It is. I was hustling this morning from College Park to the intramural field because I was like, I gotta get to the helicopter.
Is
But
that where they landed?
mhm,
Oh, that's so exciting.
yeah, talk about empowering. Whew, I mean,
I went in a helicopter, I think only once, and that was on our honeymoon. Les's great aunt, who was like a grandmother to him, gave us a helicopter tour of Kauai, where we went on our honeymoon. And it was one of the highlight, well, it was the highlight of the whole vacation.
wow.
They put on this beautiful music in your earphones, and they dive this helicopter like into a volcano and around the Nepali coast.
Wow, that is
You get
insane.
to see a lot of things that you wouldn't see like if you just took a car.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. That there are so many cool things to do at Cal State Fullerton. Let's just
Yes,
plug it right
yes.
here, Kathy.
Not everybody can say that they've ridden in a Blackhawk. I mean, that's really something.
Yeah, I mean, I had to give myself a little grace.
Yeah.
I was really nervous.
Were you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was, but it was a really good experience. But I think definitely, anybody who's listening can definitely get a lot of great universal advice for taking care of themselves, raising children. I mean, thank you for sharing your
Oh,
story
yeah.
and your tips as
And
well.
I don't proclaim to be an expert at any of it, but at least I've been through enough so that I can have some perspective.
Absolutely. The experts are really the people that just call themselves the experts. So
Right, right.
awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us, for listening, for watching and reading the blog. Be sure to tune in to Kathy Douglas's monthly blog and a video podcast series where we chat about tips and topics like writing, motherhood, work experience, dealing with life in itself. And we want to hear from you. So if there's anything you want us to talk about or you want to join us about, go to the blog and type a little comment and it'll go straight to us. So learn more at kathydouglas.com and we'll hope to see you all soon. Bye.
Right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Woo!
That
I
was great.
accidentally turned on a whiteboard so on Zoom. So